All right.
V, we are live.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's the one, the only V, the Guerrilla Economist, coming to you live. And it's a special broadcast. Number one, I was supposed to be home by 3:30. There's been a massive accident. So I am broadcasting live on the road in New York traffic. You got to love it. You don't get any more live and raw than this. With that being said, my man CJ is working the airwaves, making sure that this broadcast is coming out spiffy. And guys, we have a special guest today, a man who needs no introduction to Rogue Money. If you haven't heard of him already, you've been living under a rock, and you need to be aware of him very quickly. It's none other than Ivan Thorne. Ivan is an amazing individual. He's the author of the book, The 9 Laws, which is one of my perennial favorites. It's found a wonderful, warm place in my bookshelf, and it should do for yours as well. With that being said, Ivan has seen massive growth since the last time he's been on here sharing his thoughts with us. And, he is active in the liberty movement as well as the things that are concerning us men in the Western world. It's very important that you guys listen in and cue in very carefully as to what Ivan is saying and what the ideas that he's being put forth, because these are ideas that are set to empower you to get free of whatever it is that is binding you and holding you down. Also, be aware that Ivan is. So we're using a capture system that is, that takes what me or even CJ says. Ivan is able to partake in this conversation. So if you see a delay or hear a delay, know that is what is going on. With that being said, Ivan, welcome back, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back on Rogue Money with you.
Great. Ivan, since you've last been on, man, I'm looking at your stats here. The Dark Triad, man, brand growth has been astronomical. Plus Twitter impersonations, 7,000 followers, over 500,000 page views, listeners, copies of The 9 Laws, one of my favorite books, has been sold since October 2016, and the site right now is ranked top 40,000 in the U.S. as per Alexa. Ivan, congratulations on your momentous growth.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's been an absolutely astonishing ride. The work just continues to grow, both what's being done out there in the field, out in the streets, working with people, talking with them, and also just the amount of work on the back end. Last time that we spoke, just me, and some folks that were working with me, some advisors, but at this point, especially with the Safe Streets project that we've launched, we've got a team of 6 people working virtually around the clock. It's simply been phenomenal, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
Can you tell us what the Safe Streets project is, Ivan?
Yes, let's do that. So, folks will remember that when Milo Yiannopoulos was scheduled to speak in Berkeley earlier this year, there were riots. Businesses were torched, ATMs smashed. Of course, they're not capitalists. They don't want the money. They're just making a statement, right? Fires set, people injured, women pepper sprayed by ambush, people hit with flags and sticks. Recently, what you've seen in Berkeley again on the 15th of this month, people attacking others with bike locks, drawing blood. There were stabbings in Sacramento and so on. So the street has certainly heated up. And some of you will be familiar with my advisor, Mr. Swift. He's a former Metropolitan SWAT team, riot team leader, as well as a private military contractor. He does some advising with me, and we looked at some of the footage that came from the protests in Berkeley, the original ones when Milo was set to speak, and we saw some things that were extremely concerning. Now, when you have a riot like that, you have a street protest that goes bad. There are a number of things we look for. Who's showing up? What's their equipment? How many of them? What are they doing? Who's there? And Mr. Swift and I spotted something that was extraordinarily concerning and really reframed our thinking about how dangerous the situation was on the ground. To make it sure, what we spotted was private military contractors embedded in the ranks of the Antifa.
No
So what
way.
are private military contractors? These are mercenaries. These are people who work for private armies. They cost money. They are very professional. They have skill sets that are far beyond what your average, even metropolitan police force can bring to bear with your standard officer. Riot teams or SWAT teams are a little different. But even then, these are people who have combat experience. They're probably coming from a background where they're skilled with training insurgents. They're skilled with organizing insurgents. And if their back is to the wall, you don't want to get in their way. So what do we do about that? That presents things on the ground in a very different light. The Antifa have a history going back virtually 100 years. In April of 1919, they sent over 30 dynamite bombs to U.S. officials. The following year, they killed 138 people in New York City in front of Wall Street. For those of you in New York listening, you may be familiar with that story of the Wall Street bomb. It's a very big deal. Excuse me, they killed a little over 30. They wounded 143. So, one death is a statistic, right? So what do we do with that? And I circled with some folks that I had some connections with. We talked, and they were seeing the same danger upon that information being released. So we decided to do something about it. One of the things I'm a very huge proponent of, I think this is crucial for everybody listening to understand, the digital world is great. It's propaganda, it's intelligence, it's information. But boots on the ground, meat in the street, beats digital every single time. You can always shoot a man who is sitting at a keyboard and silence him. And one of the things that the left, even though they've lost the initiative, and we'll talk about this a little later on, even though they've lost the initiative in terms of cultural narrative, the meme warfare, and so on, they are still very good at a number of things that the right is not good at. They support their people after they're arrested. They support their people in prison. They continue their work in prison. They have a history. They have a tradition. They have a culture that goes back 100 years, and they glorify their martyrs. We've seen this kind of thing before. It's not going to stop if you simply attempt to conserve what you have. They are an offensive force. Then Trotsky, in fact, created them as part of his original mimetic warfare of permanent revolution in the disputed societies. That's what we're facing on the ground. Now, it's amusing and it's great and it's fun, and it is in fact a genuine pleasure to see the wedges and to see the mocking and to see the humiliation of the Antifa and the left on the ground. But keep something in mind. Pressure causes leaders to rise. The left has had no shortage of men willing to step forward as a leader, create a cult of personality, and topple the gunshot bodies of millions in a pit full of blood and fat. They've done it before, they will do it again. The purpose of the Safe Streets Project is to weaponize the common man and women in the street. They're decent people. They're not interested in going to protest. They're not interested in standing up to Antifa on the street or charging into their ranks. That's not what they do. That's not what they're trained or equipped for. What we're doing now is, with the Safe Streets Project, is creating tools for them to identify, flag, collate intelligence on the Antifa, the Black Bloc, Black Lives Matter. And the Safe Streets Project becomes a central clearinghouse for all of this information. We have a very deep team. We have retired senior military officers. We have threat intelligence company CEOs. We have people with law enforcement experience. We have people with cryptography, anon experience. We've been working around the clock for about 4 months now. And we're going to deliver it to you by May Day.
Can you tell us what this new technologies that you've been working, and I think it's absolutely went viral when you released it on Twitter. Solutions, man. I jumped all over it when I saw it. Can you explain to the audience what that is? Safe Streets.
Certainly. So Safe Streets Project, that's our overall effort. Violent Solutions is our technology engine. It's a cloud-based platform. It's hardened. It's encrypted. We are pulling in a number of cutting-edge technologies as well as, of course, some proven technologies together. And it has things such as automated facial recognition. It correlates intelligence reports. We're working on adding in things like machine learning. We're taking data dumps from interested organizations that have already been creating their own intelligence repositories on Antifa, on the left, on the Black Bloc, and we're tying it all together. One of the things that's been an issue is that because the right has been so reactive for over 40 years, I'll make the point here why conservatism in many ways has failed. They have not conserved anything in 40 years. They've gotten into a mindset of playing defense. The Safe Streets Project is an offensive platform. Our goal is to stop this momentum of the left on the ground before it becomes kinetic. That's very important. People hear violent solutions and they think, oh, you're starting a militia. No, the left already has the militias on the ground. They're already hurting people. They're already doing live weapons training, has been seen, and funding for events like Pikeville, Kentucky, where there's openly calling their people to not mask, to wear plain clothes, and to show up with disrupt it. The violent solutions piece, that's our technology. That's our core engine that ties all of this together. So the Safe Streets Project, what we do is we have that engine. It's a mobile platform. It's also a desktop platform. And the idea is you see all of these people at protests. They're witnessing violence. They're disgusted by it. They're shocked by it. And they feel absolutely helpless. Let's say a 50-year-old woman, your kids have left home, you're getting interested in doing something, you decide to go into politics, you think you'll show up at the Capitol for, of all things, a free speech march, and you're suddenly confronted with a violent mob of masked men with communist flags and bike locks. We can't possibly expect her to even hold her, but you know what I can guarantee you, she has a cell phone. She can take pictures. She can quick post, upload her intelligence reports, and then we can cross-reference that. We have ties with the media. We have ties with a number of groups that we're disinclined to discuss, as well as some of our contacts. But I will say that in some cases, it reaches to the flag officer level. So that's how this works. We have the project. We're going to make sure that we are taking back free speech. We're going to attrite the ranks of Antifa by identifying them and ensuring their rendition to law enforcement.
Ivan, can you tell us, you said the is discombobulated and they're in disarray. And one of the things you've highlighted is these private military contractors. Anybody in any media talk about these private military contractors. And now it makes sense because all of a sudden the Antifa are getting weapons training. And I was wondering who was giving them this training. Do we have an idea which groups, which private military groups are supporting Antifa, and who are some of the funders or paying the money for Antifa and all this specialized training?
These are things that we're following up on now. One of the ways that you can productively analyze some of this is to look at some of the binary back and forths. Are they doing weapons training or they're not? Are they? We have video footage of it. Are they throwing explosives into crowds at this point? Yes, they are. Where are they getting the experience and training from? It's either being organically arisen through their ranks, or it's being provided for them. And we know that the left has a history. Just a perfect example, you have some of the organizers, the same people that were at the J20 protests in Washington, the same people in Berkeley. These are the same people that show up in Europe when they have the G8 meetings, if you have the Council on Foreign Relations, any of these umbrella groups that hold conferences. The Antifa show up and we see the same leaders. They're paid. So how does this work? Where does the money come from? The immediate answer that George is going to die very soon. I think we have an audio cutout. Can you hear me? Okay. So, but there won't be any shortage of replacements. If you think Mark Zuckerberg, with all of his billions, won't decide at some point to put his finger on the pie, think again. There are a lot of names that are starting to float towards us, and on both sides. But what they do, they have multiple shell nonprofits. They all work together. They're nested in very convoluted layers. And that's one of the things we're doing. It's not very sexy work. It's not very dramatic work. But following up where the money goes, where it came from, how it got there, who's using it, who's spending it, how it's being spent. That's absolutely a part of the Safe Streets project. It's a necessary part. In terms of who's paying for private military contractors, that's not information that we're inclined to discuss at this point, but be aware that we are following up on that. And an important thing, and for those of the left who are inevitably listening, understand something. You do not know the people that you're working with, and we do. And it's one of the things that the Safe Streets project will explicitly be doing on a very private channel, is ensuring that those private military contractors embedded on the left have a way out. We don't want them fighting their way out. We're going to give them a way out. Well, they need to be aware of that. The alternative is a very abrupt kinetic resolution on the ground, and that's something the Safe Streets project is designed in part to prevent.
Ivan, one of the things I want to discuss with you, all throughout the modern Western world, the Western world seems to be going down in flames. What is right now, Ivan, in your opinion, what is right now the strategic and tactical situation that is in the United States and in the West in general?
I think it's important to recognize, in terms of that strategic and tactical situation, I believe we're referring here more to the political situation as opposed to the United States versus North Korea. Those things are always going to be taking place between one nation and another. But within the United States, within France, within the United Kingdom, there are a number of extraordinary opportunities rising right now to turn the tide of where things have been going for the last 40 years. And we talked about how the left is discombobulated, they're in disarray. They won't be that way. They have a mindset. They have one of my advisors calls a perceptual tics. They tend to twitch and react in predictable manner. And what they're finding is that that's worked for them for quite some time. But all of a sudden, especially with the rise of meme warfare, with the change of initiative, the change of spirit that's taken place in the United States, make America great again. It's a terrific, not just a slogan, but it's a meme, all the way from Pepe to CAC and all of those things that people see coming out of alternative news sources, outside of alternative technology. This is where things have fundamentally changed, and this is very, very important for everybody to understand. I want to talk a little bit about alternative movements. You've heard of the alt-right. Everybody's heard of that at this point.
Right.
Let's leave off the right for a moment, and I want to talk about the alt. The definition, purely, of these alternative movements is 3 points to keep in mind. Number one, they are offensive movements. They are not defensive. They are not conservative. They are on the march. They are determined to win, not to slow down defeat. Number two, they don't care what you think. The left is finding, because of this, that their typical attacks, well, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're ableist, you're sexist, or, there's an endless opportunity of isms and ists that they have flung for 40 years that suddenly we don't care anymore. They've reached a point where they have saturated their target audience with insult, with mockery, with shame and denigration to the point people don't care anymore. That's a big deal. The third piece is that the alt movements intend to burn down and put an end to the platforms that have failed for the last 2 generations. The alt media is a perfect example of this. It used to be, if you wanted to get something in front of hundreds of thousands of people, you had to go through the major media. You had to go through television. You had to go through the major radio shows. You had to go through the print publications like the New York Times. We all remember those days. Most of us do. Now stop and take a look at where we are today. The President of the United States among all others, is probably the most alt, I don't say alt-right, but alt figure in national leadership in the last 40 years. Openly calls the Gray Lady of the New York Times fake news. Very bad and sad. For the first time in generations, we have aligned leadership with aligned vision, aligned tactics, and an aligned greater goal to turn the West around, all the way from the Oval Office down to the people sitting at their keyboards in the dark, doing the weaponized autism of Paul to find these people on the ground. There's a clear vertical alignment, and there's clear forward momentum within the space, and it's infecting other countries. I can't guarantee you that Marine Le Pen will win in France, but if she does, you know what's going to happen there next, the same thing that's happening here. Great Britain moves a little slower. They have a very serious situation where London is essentially under Muslim occupation, including their mayor. Can't simply clean all that out and restore the historic London. They have to move more slowly. The Brexit is a good first step, and it's an example of the people of the nation in Great Britain finding their balls again. That's happening here, that's happening in France. If you follow the news that's coming out of Eastern Europe, look at Poland, where you have tens or scores of thousands of people marching to preserve their nation. Multiculturalism as an ideal is not successful. Communism was not successful. They sound nice on paper, don't they? But the reality is that diversity plus proximity eventually equals war. The idea here is to transform that war with the Safe Streets Project here to start in the United States, to pull it back along that continuum back into politics. Bottom line, everything's moving very quickly. It's going to be happening everywhere. And right now, with alt-tech, alt-media, alt-right, alt-finance, which is coming very soon, I can't discuss the details of that yet, but it's big. There are borders on the old ship of the Leviathan, and we're throwing ropes down to all of you. Climb up. We have the deck. Let's win it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With that being said, Ivan, what say you? I mean, you know, I love the fact that we in the conservative libertarian movement, the alt-right, whatever you want to call us, we are the counterculture right now. We are what's hot. And I think the latest research came out that Generation Z, which is the generation after these useless millennials, the Generation Z, these kids that are in preschool, kindergarten, middle school, high school right now, they're the most conservative generation coming up since World War II. What is your thought on that? I think for a guy like me, it gives me hope that there is a good glimmer of hope for the future.
You've touched on something. You've touched on half of two critical things. The first is what you've talked about with Generation Z. From personal experience, I'll share that is absolutely true. I gave a speech for Turning Point USA. It's an organization founded by Charlie Kirk. And what they do is they provide professional activist support for college students on the conservative side. That's a very brief summary, and I'm oversimplifying it, but that's the gist of it. I came in contact with them when I discovered that Milo was coming to give a speech in Boulder. And I thought, well, that's terrific. That's close enough to my home. I'm in the Denver metro area. I thought, I'm going to touch base, find out who's doing this, see if I can provide any assistance. So I met with these folks, very young, very green, very, very bright, and able to see where things are going. And it is extraordinary. They had such incredible competence. They were so focused, and they had very, very little regard for the old, tired propaganda coming out for the last 40 years. They see things very clearly. They have not grown up wedded to the authoritative received wisdom of major media outlets. That's not their experience. They did not grow up with that. They look at everything. They assess everything. And when you look at everything and assess everything as you're growing up, and you have that mindset of always looking, what's truth? What's not true? What are the facts? What actually happened when you do something or try something? It's evident. Communism does not work. Communism was allowed to die out on its own. Nazism, that didn't work, but that had to be exterminated kinetically. Sometimes there's varying levels of danger. But what they do see, the danger to this nation right now, is continuing to slide into where the left has taken us. It's a spiral of idiocy. And the encouraging thing about Generation Z, and this is something that I cannot overstate the importance of, the spirit is not just strong, it's not just focused, it's delighted. It's happy. These people enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I look at these young faces. I'm giving my speech in Denver. There's a massive crowd of Antifa down below screaming and protesting and getting themselves arrested because I was speaking there. Flyers were still posted up around town with my face on. They don't like me very much, especially now, of course. And to see the shining purpose that's coming out of them, they are ready for the challenge. They want this challenge. They are enjoying this fight, and they know they're winning it. And no matter what happens, they are going to inherit this nation, and they're getting ready for that as well. If we pull off the victory today, if we can hand them this nation, the work we do today is going to continue for generations, not just in the United States, not just in Western Europe, but it's the new opportunity for a real torch of freedom to start spreading once more. And the United States can return to its role of the correct steward and leader of that freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Ivan, some tips here for the average person, the average man and woman listening to this broadcast. I mean, we have a lot of things occurred. I mean, many people are disheartened by some of the moves that the president of the United States has done recently. Many feel defeated, but please, people need to understand that we are on the winning side, and it's not looking for a political leader that's going to turn this tide. It's when men and women begin to look within themselves, that they begin to ignite the fire in each other's hearts, and they begin to put their hands to do the good work. What are some of the key takeaways here for the average person? You said it so perfectly. I mean, tools and low-hanging ladders are rapidly lowered by the borders of the Leviathan. Grab hold, climb up. How do we let those that are listening know that they do have hard and ruthless allies who intend to win?
A couple of answers there. The first, speaking to this common man and woman, you may have a mild interest in politics, but it's not what you do every day. You're not a political activist. You're not reading social media obsessively, looking for that last negative information that makes things change. You have a life to live. You have a job you go to. You have children to raise. Maybe you're in school. Maybe you're running a business. All of these things take time. How do you know what's going on? How do you find that spirit of hope and not look at what's going on day to day in the news and think, oh, we're invading Syria. Oh, he won't build the wall. All of these things. Understand the perspective that you need to take, and that's to zoom out and zoom in. You need to zoom out. Look at the bigger picture. Think of how different things are today. Even if you're not current with social media, even if you ignore social media, you can't ignore the fact that Trump is now in the Oval Office. And he got there, not because he played the game, but because he changed the game.
Mm-hmm.
See that, recognize it. How do you deal with potential policy disappointments as they come down the pike? You have to understand that there's a difference between campaigning and governing. Trump is also faced right now with an extraordinarily difficult challenge, and that is not just leading the nation, not just governing the nation, not just representing the United States and setting policy and direction of our military economy and all of those things. He's also dealing with the remnants, what's sometimes called the deep state, of 40 years of leftist governance. Make no mistake, they loathe Trump. They loathe you. They loathe me. And they will do anything they can to preserve their power and to restore their ideological prominence. There's an expression that you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you.
Mm.
You are in this struggle. I am sorry, but there is not a way beyond that. Recognize where you are. Recognize that you're on the winning side. There are small things that you can do to take part. Join the Safe Solutions Project. Make sure you have our app on your phone. You see this stuff. Antifa, masked bandits spraying elderly people, pepper spray and tear gas. Photograph it. You don't even need to engage them. But send it to us. That's our job. If you're interested in being politically involved, go to your Republican county meetings, local meetings. Just listen. See what they're doing. Know the people.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the bigger picture as you do this. What's actually happening with North Korea? What's actually happening with Iran? And one of the things that came out when Trump sent Tomahawk missiles into Syria, lots of people immediately got very, very upset. Oh, we're going to war with Syria. He's just a neocon. Nothing's different. Woe and gloom and doom and horror stories. But you know what? Every president has to test his military forces. Every king burns a village or two when he first starts out. It's part of how it's done. And people who complain, oh, Russia has severed ties with us, do you really think so? Do you really think that if we call this, I almost said the Soviet Union, that if we call Russia, they don't pick the phone up? That there's no coordination? Do you think Putin looks to his south and sees Islam rising and shrugs? Do you think China looks southwest? They're fighting their own insurgency. One of the things that's come to our team through some back channels, missionary channels, in fact, was that they are now killing Muslims on the streets in far western China. It's gotten hot on the ground, though.
Wow.
The Chinese are not stupid.
No.
They've moved off communism and into capitalism. They don't expect their nation to die. They're going to preserve it. The same goes for Putin. The same goes for us. That's your bigger picture. Understand that. The West knows where its adversary lies. Now here, domestically, where does your adversary lie? I would submit to you the first adversary you have and wants to silence you. If you can't speak your conscience, if you can't say what you think without fear of being bombed or shot, hit with a bike lock, or your business trashed and burned, or your livelihood destroyed because you don't bake a cake, I'm sorry, that's the war reaching you. I would say get involved today. And the easiest thing to do is to talk to people. Exercise that free speech. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, support each other. Bills that are absolutely essential and irreplaceable.
Ivan, give out your contact information. Excuse me. CJ, take over again.
Yep, Roger. Yeah, Ivan, if you would please, because I think the information, what you're sharing is just so important for our listeners. And maybe people don't see it right now. They're not in line and tune with the news that we're seeing. Is that we're seeing a huge shift in the hard left, where they're aligning themselves with these radical groups. We're seeing them now move to a new stage of almost becoming, weaponized now. So I think what you're doing and what you're accomplishing is just so important for people to understand that this is coming true, and what work you're creating is going to help to defeat this. So could you please share your website?
Probably there's two ways to find my work, to reach me, and to reach the Safe Streets Project. The first is the safestreetsproject.org. We have a number of domains, but that's the one we're working on. There's not a lot there right now, because what we're doing is focusing. We're actually in beta test version 3 right now. And we have some of you may have seen that I won't say infamous, I'll say famous, weaponized artists at Paul from 4chan. These are the people that found Shia LaBeouf's "He Will Not Divide Us" flag within 24 hours, 3 times. They've managed to get airstrikes called in on ISIS in Syria. Tremendous, absolutely brilliant pool of people. And we have an expression that we're using for them within the Safe Streets Project. We call it massive multiplayer online information analysis. That's what they are. And it's almost the Bletchley Park of the right. If folks are familiar with World War II and the Enigma Project and how the British cracked it, look up Bletchley Park. That's really what Paul is. They are partnered with us now. They'll be using our platform. So safestreetsproject.org. And of course, you can always find my work at darktriadman.com. Right now, I'm absolutely inundated with emails, so I can't reply to each single one, but I do read all of them. So if you reach out to me, I will hear you.
Awesome. Well said. I had to step away, CJ. I had to get some water. All of a sudden got the Hillary Clinton coughs, man. But Ivan, thank you so much for being on, man. You've really changed. Yeah, sorry. You've really changed, my life and the lives of many listeners out there. Folks, if you haven't gotten the 9 Laws, it is the ultimate book. And Ivan, before we leave, man, we got about 5 minutes. Why don't you share with us the 9 Laws and why that book is so profound? It's not your typical self-help motivational book. This is how to operate in the dark world, and we are in a dark world.
Sure. So let's talk about that dark world for a moment. I don't call this a dark world because it's horrible and painful and brutal, although it often is. It's a dark world because it ends. All of this ends. And in the meantime, we need to live within it. What's the most competent way to live within it? How do you create for yourself or adopt for yourself, or most of all, install for yourself operating on which the software of ethics, the software of faith, the software of values and ideology and politics? How do all of those things work? You install them on the human being. The 9 Laws is your operating system. It's born from over 40 years of experience in this dark world. I've gone through some shattering experiences, very painful, but I've found the way through them because of some unique confluences of things: my training, my experience, my disability, my education. And I'm here to tell all of you, I don't care what your challenges are. I don't care what your limitations are. I guarantee you that most of you, it's possible there's 1 or 2, but most of you are not standing naked at the edge of a killing pit, emaciated and waiting for a gunshot to the back of the neck. Make no mistake that that's what the left wants for you. Because you're not there, you have almost limitless possibility to explode a new universe into being, with your own life, with your family, your loved ones, your success, all of that. Take that to heart. Pick up my book, The 9 Laws. Read through the challenges and understand the operating system that's used. Take your thought, your word, and your deed and align them. Focus them into vision, planning, and competence, and then harden them into controls with which you can steer the direction of fate. That is what I am doing in my work, a Dark Triad Man. That is what I want to see you manifest in your own life.
Absolutely. Ivan Thorne, thank you so much, sir, for being on. CJ, thank you for putting the broadcast together, and thank you for all the people that are working the captioning system to make this broadcast possible. We'll be back next week, and again, you can follow Ivan on his Twitter as well as his social media page. Thank you so much, guys.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Have a great day.